What's going on, everyone? My name is Wesley Shoemaker, joined by Keenan Cummings, and we are back with another episode of the WVSports.com podcast. On today's episode, we are going to be previewing Iowa State and what all of a sudden in the last 2 weeks has turned out to be a pretty big matchup for both the Mountaineers and the Cyclones. We also have an interview with Bill Seals of the rival site there at Iowa State, and also have some basketball news that we will hit on uh, at the end somewhere in this episode. So, Keenan, first things first, Iowa State. Before I break them down, just kind of your thoughts on what has now turned into a pretty big game for both West Virginia and Iowa State.
Yeah, we've arrived at 3-2, just like we all expected. Exactly how we expected. This Iowa State team is pretty much what we've come to expect out of Matt Campbell's teams. Offensively, they're better than you think. They put up pretty good numbers, but their bread and butter's defense. That John Haycock defense, we all know it by now. Kind of that high safety look. They use that star safety. They'll use him to fit the run. They can drop 8 in coverage on pretty much every play. They show you a light box. They dare you to run. And then the linebackers and that star safety kind of come up and fit it. So a lot of versatility. I think it's a matchup that West Virginia is not as favorable as it was a week ago, especially when it comes to running the ball. You look at their numbers defensively, they're better than I even expected. And some of that I think could play into their schedule. They haven't really played a ton of great offensive football teams at this point, but you got to give credit where credit's due, and they're doing it again, kind of the recipe that they always do it. Offensively, Rocco Beck's playing really well, and he's got 2 really good wide receivers, and they don't have a Breece Hall type player this year or a David Montgomery type player, but they use multiple backs. They're going to get 3-4 running backs involved. A lot of them have different skill sets, some really dynamic players. So I think that this is the Iowa State we've come to expect. And I think that this game, when you look at it, if this game was on the road, I think that would be really, really hard for West Virginia. But you got it at home. You got the coal rush. Everybody's changing their profile pictures. They're black and white. You got some momentum. Can West Virginia – this is the question of the week. Before we even dive into this game, Wes, can West Virginia seize momentum under Neil Brown? Because this is your chance. You had one chance before, you blew it. You had another chance against Pitt, really, to kind of turn things a little bit, you blew it. And I hate to be so frank, but that's what happened. You didn't show up against Penn State. You fumbled the bag against Pitt.
Fumbled the bag? Look at you with this hip lingo here.
Yes, I'm quite the hipster. But now you have a chance to really change some people's minds. You've won 2 Big 12 games in a row. You dominated an Oklahoma State team that, quite frankly, looked tired and beat up. But still, you went out there and done that. And now you have a chance to come back home, get a ranked win, which has not been commonplace. There's been 3 under Neil Brown. Get a ranked win at home and really start to see some momentum and maybe put yourself in position to be that team that you thought could compete for a big – I mean, you win this game, you're right in the thick of things.
Yeah, just let's kind of set the scene here. Iowa State 5-0, 2-0 in Big 12 play. West Virginia 3-2. But the key statistic here, 2-0 in Big 12 play. These are 2 of the, I believe there's 5 remaining undefeated teams in the league, and they're the only 2 that are playing each other this week. I know Colorado, one of the others, has a tough test. They play Kansas State, which will be a good barometer for Colorado. But this is the game. You have a kind of a right to first place, and also in the same breath, if you end up being near the top with Iowa State later in the year, you would hold the tiebreaker over Iowa State later in the year. So that's a big game. But then also, as you say, can this team get momentum? Can they get that signature win that this fan base, I think, Keenan, has been craving for a pretty long time? And they have not beaten a ranked team since Iowa State last came into Morgantown in 2021. And so that was 2021. This is 2024.
Long time.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute. But yeah, let's break down the Cyclones. So number 11 in the country. First 5-0 start since 1980. That is a long time too. But they're in some somewhat historical territory, which
that predates me.
Wow. Shot. No, I'm playing.
But
no, in all seriousness, beat North Dakota, went on the road and beat Iowa late, beat Arkansas State, and then their 2 Big 12 wins are over Houston and Baylor. So as you kind of briefly mentioned, Yeah, really hard schedule. Strength of schedule metrics are probably through the roof. No, but head coach Matt Campbell, everyone knows his name. 9 years at Iowa State. He is 4-3 versus West Virginia. Iowa State has won 4 out of the last 5 against the Mountaineers going back to 2018, which I think everyone's seen this one on social media of everyone saying, let's flip the script from 2018 when a ranked West Virginia team went into Ames and in a somewhat blackout, I guess their version of Coal Rush, got it handed to them and
Corn
lost.
Rush or something. I don't know.
Corn Rush. That's a good one. But let's go on offense. Rocco Beck, as you mentioned, 66% completion percentage, almost 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He can run around a little bit. He's got 19 rushes for 55 yards and a couple of scores.
Extend plays really well. I mean, that's what he does the best.
For sure. In Big 12 play, 62% passing, 430 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Then their running backs. As you said, they've got 3 running backs that they kind of rely on and go to. And it's not like it's one guy gets the work and the other 2. They get kind of equal shares of work. Jalen Jackson, Abu Sama, and Carson Hansen. All 3 got work last week against Baylor. Jackson and Hansen each got 15 rushes. Sama, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. That's on me. He got 8 rushes. So as you can see, they kind of spread their wealth. And even just looking at the numbers, 2 of them have 48 rushes, another has 41. 295 yards, 242 yards, 211 yards. So there's not really that cowbell back, but all 3 can get it done. And when you have 3 running backs and you can kind of get late into games and you're still rolling out somewhat fresh legs, that can be a big factor. Wide receiver, Jalen Noel, 24 catches, 451 yards, 2 scores. Another one, Jaden Higgins, 33 catches for 403 and 5 touchdowns on the year. Tight end, Benjamin Brahmer, he has 7 catches for 145 yards and touchdown. Outside of those 2 receivers I first mentioned, there's no one else with 7 or more catches besides Brahmer. So it's kind of those 2 guys and a little bit of Brahmer on the outside there.
Yeah, these are the best 2 wide receivers West Virginia's played all year, in my opinion. They're very, very good. And usually Iowa State has one big guy that they can throw it to. And you can go back to since West Virginia's first got in this league, they've always had that one big wide receiver. And this year they got 2 of them, and they're both really good. And it's going to be a problem for West Virginia. You know, you have seen the pass coverage improve. I thought last week was excellent. Neil talked on it in his press conference this week. You know, they did a good job in their zones. You know, they hit their landmarks, did everything they needed to do to improve in that area. So teams were, you know, Oklahoma State wasn't able to gut them on the crossers. They got 2 sacks basically by playing coverage. Yep. This is a little bit of a different animal this week. I think that Iowa State is a better passing football team, and they have some weapons to exploit it. You know, they don't have the name tight end like they've had in years past, Charlie Cole or that type, but they do use their tight ends in the run game, and a lot like West Virginia shifts motion. So, you know, it's a little bit of eye candy that they'll use, and they're effective. You know, Matt Campbell's done this for a while. He always has a sneaky good offense. And I think that even when the pieces aren't necessarily as good as they are this year, it's a challenge. And I think it's going to be for West Virginia this year as well.
Yeah, before we get into the defense, just that sneaky good, right? And so Iowa State, it's not like they're kind of tearing it up offensively. They scored 21 points in 2 games and 20 in another, I think so. I mean, if you look at where they rank in the Big 12, it's near the top, but it's in like the top middle part. So it's not like they're scorching anyone, but they're doing exactly what they have to do. They're not turning the ball over a ton. They are scoring touchdowns. They've in 23 red zone trips, they've got 15 touchdowns, and they've scored on all but 3 of those red zone trips. But yeah, they're just an overall efficient offense who kind of does what they have to do to win, and they rely on their defense because that defense is really, really, really good. I wrote down like 6 or 7 names here because that's how deep and good they are on defense. And there's a lot of dudes that are in the secondary that are really good on this defense. So Cooper Ebel, he's a linebacker. He's got 35 total tackles, 3.5 TFLs. Malik Verdon, 32 tackles, 2.5 TFLs, a pick, and a forced fumble. Bo Frailer, 29 total tackles, 2 TFLs, and an interception. Jeremiah Cooper, 19 total tackles, a TFL, and 2 interceptions. Another dude with 19 total tackles, 2 TFLs, and 2 interceptions is John Tez Williams. And then J.R. Singleton, who injuries are a little bit of a concern with him potentially. He has 15 tackles, 3.5 TFLs, and 3 sacks. But when you look at where they rank in the Big 12, total defense, they're first. Pass defense, they're first. Defensive efficiency, first. They've got 9 sacks on the year. Opponent first downs, they are second. Third down percentage, they are 7th. Fourth down percentage, this might be a little bit of a key. They are 12th, 55.6% on fourth down, which, as we know, West all they seem to do is go,
Riverboat
go, go,
Neal.
go, go. Riverboat Neal. Rushing defense, they're 8th, 138 yards, rush yards per game. I think it's kind of early for some of these statistics, especially kind of that one, just based off who you play and when you play them, because some teams, we're still only have a 4 to 5, 6 game sample size, so it's hard to really go there. And then special teams, their kicker is a long of 54. He's missed 2 kicks. Both came between 40 and 49 yards. And then on kickoffs, 25 kickoffs, 17 of those touchbacks. And then these two teams have not played since 2022. So that was when West Virginia went in there and they just didn't have anything. Just not a single threat of anything. They lost 31-14, had 200 total yards of offense. It was just ugly. But yeah, so that's a breakdown of who Iowa State kind of is. I think what stands out to me, Keenan, is you're going to have to run the ball. You're going to have to run the ball, and you're going to have to run the ball well, and then you're going to have to stop the run. I know we mentioned matchups, and that was especially key last week against Oklahoma State. And I think West Virginia matches up well when they're trying to stop the run. It's just a matter of how can they run the ball, because if they can hold the ball and kind of keep that Iowa State offense off the field, that's going to be their key to victory, because to me, there's not much you can do sometimes to stop these teams that want to kind of chew clock. Because if you think about it, West Virginia, Iowa State are somewhat similar. They want to run the ball. They want to kind of own possession. And if you're the Mountaineers, I think you got to control that if you want to get out of Saturday with a win.
Yeah, the key to these teams is pretty similar. Both of them have the ability to take shots downfield. They have pretty good wide receivers, pass catchers, but they want to run the football, and then they also want to stop the run. And I think for West Virginia offensively, it'll be interesting to me to see how they use their tight ends and what they do to kind of, get a hat on that free hitter. That's what that safety does. Sometimes it's their linebacker, depending on the way it lines up, but you got to be able to kind of get that guy, identify him, and not let him come up and just fit the run all day. And that's been the struggle, when they changed this whole thing, which still is one of the wildest stories in college football, that they used an off week to completely change their defense and really revolutionize kind of the way you defend a spread offense. The hard part with these spread offenses is, you got 5 guys in the box, or defensive line are basically always crashing in, and then the linebackers and the safeties come fill the run. So it makes it tough, but there's ways to go around it. West Virginia has had success against this scheme in the past. Not as much as you would like, but, you mentioned that game in 2021. West Virginia moved the ball pretty well. I think that they've done it before. With what Neal does, it's a little bit different than what Dana did as well. So some of these matchups, you throw out 2022. That was just a nightmare game. You get those sometimes. But credit to Iowa State. That game actually started pretty slow for Iowa State, and they just rolled West Virginia right after they got it together. But you're hoping that this is a better performance at home. I think West Virginia's a much better football team than they were at that point. And the question I have is, that Iowa State's going to play good defense, but how good is this defense so far? Because you look at the teams they've played, noted offensive powerhouse Iowa, and Baylor and Houston. Clearly I'm being a little facetious here, but I don't think any of those teams are necessarily great offensively. So this might be their biggest challenge too. It might be the way both way around. Now, Penn State, pretty good defense too. It's not the same scheme, but pretty good. So West Virginia's had been challenged before. They didn't answer the bell. Let's see how they answer the bell at home. There's going to be a really good environment for this game. It's a night game. People have been begging, clawing, hoping for a night game to get a feature marquee opponent like this at home. And I think it's a golden opportunity for West Virginia if they can take advantage of it.
Yeah, for the opportunity part, I think the next 2 weeks, just in general, you really could not have, I don't think, drawn it up any better if you're the Mountaineers. I know that what happened in September, but you're past that now. You're moved on from what happened at Pitt, from what happened against Penn State. And now you have back-to-back home weeks against ranked opponents, both night games. If you're Ren Baker and you say to the Big 12, here's how I would like my 2 home games in the month of October to play out, it's exactly like this. And if you can win those 2 games, the conversations we are having at that point are, how good is this team to possibly be in Dallas and beyond? Because
you've answered the questions.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where it's what team are we going to see? Because the moment has been there, and you mentioned it at the top. The moment has been there for this West Virginia team time and time again. And it's been there in a big way once this year on national television. That was week 1 against Penn State. And you just weren't there. You didn't show up. And I think the inconsistencies kind of cast a shadow of doubt into some minds about what you might see against this Iowa State team. But you also have to take Iowa State's success, I think, with a little bit of a grain of salt because of who they've played. Because, I mean, they gave up 21 points to Baylor. Is that really that great of a defense? Like, Baylor was in that game all the way until like midway through the third quarter. Like, they were giving it to Iowa State a little bit, and then I think Iowa State had a special teams touchdown or a defensive touchdown, so that kind of changes things instantly. But my point being is that one of the quote-unquote lesser teams in this league was in it in their building for a good chunk of that game Saturday night. And so if you're West Virginia, I think all that fans want to see is just you give them their best shot, because I don't think at Penn State this year they give Penn State their best shot. And so I think that's what they're clamoring for, is they want to see the team that they saw last week against Oklahoma State. They want to see that version of this team come out in an environment that is as good and in a game that is as high profile as this one could be. And so with all the implications of the line, it's a big dang deal what's going on in Morgantown this Saturday.
Yeah, and two things I want to mention. I guess 3 things really, but I think the move for Jordan Leslie going to the box has helped the defense. There's
100%.
no question there. I think he kind of sidestepped that a little bit, but it's something he talked about doing last year, and he wanted to wait and kind of see how the changes affected. Realized it wasn't that big of a deal with the coach-to-player communication and the tablets and all that. But one thing that Neil touched on this week that it kind of went under the radar a little bit, but I think is important. He admitted they did not handle that Penn State situation well. There was anxiety, whatever you want to call it, and they just didn't show up. So they're handling it different this week. They're not doing the exposure stuff. They're not having the big, for lack of a better term, pep rally on Pat McAfee's show. It's kind of just buckle down, get to work, get to, do your business and get out there and play. And really that's when West Virginia has been their best under Neil Brown, when they've kind of been flying under the radar and just keep to themselves. They covered up the schedule. They're really living their whole 1-0 mantra. They covered up the schedule in the team room, just a big white piece of paper that says 1-0. So I think that you're putting that into practice, and that helps, in a sense, because this is a team that you struggled, but it's all about conference play. And I know that there are fans out there kind of rolling their eyes at me. They'd rather beat Pitt than beat Kansas. But in the grand scheme of things, if this team does go on a run, and they end up in the Big 12 title game or win it, and I'm not getting ahead of myself, this is a hypothetical, I don't think people are going to be that upset in the end. And I think that speaks volumes. And the last thing I want to say is I've seen a lot of kind of downplaying and dismissing what happened in Stillwater last week across the fan base. You got to prove it this week. And I understand that. But Oklahoma State, even when they struggle, doesn't get beat like that at home very often. And I think you got to give this West Virginia team credit for doing that. Yes, they looked like a beat-up team. Yes, they did not look good offensively. Ollie Gordon you can make all the excuses in the world, but I hear all the time excuses don't matter. Go out and win. And they did that. And I think that needs to be recognized a little bit, because that's not a situation West Virginia's found themselves, with Neil Brown. They have never gone on the road and beat a team by 24 points in the Big 12. So I think that no matter who they played, that deserves mentioning, and I think dismissing it. Maybe this is, I understand the fears and the concerns. There's not been consistency under this regime. Yeah, I think we've discussed that. We don't need to go into it anymore. But maybe this is the start of – maybe this is the team this was supposed to be. And we're going to find out. We talked about this when the schedule came out. This is going to be the stretch that really decides the season for West Virginia. They passed the first one. They got 3 more, and Arizona's looking a little shaky. You can get these 2 games at home. Who knows what can happen for this team?
Yeah, going back to just August, when we kind of gave a preview of everything to come, we said October is the month of make or break. That's going to decide this season. And in addition to that, you just really never know where the chips are going to fall in the sense of what teams are going to kind of make it out the pack. And so 2 teams that seem to be at the top of this Big 12 pack are Kansas State and Iowa State. And you have a shot at both of those teams in your building. And the other theme that we said is you have to protect your home field if you want to make any kind of noise in this league. And once again, you did it against Kansas. Can you do it against these two teams or even split? I think Keenan, if they can end the month of October 3-1, then that's when that's when the conversations really get serious, because I'm not trying to downplay anything in the month of November, but it's nothing compared to what the month of October is like. Like the month of November schedule-wise is a lot easier. And maybe that Texas Tech game is starting to get bigger and bigger the way they're playing, but there's still a long way to go before that. But obviously not trying to get ahead of myself either, but the month of October in these next 3 games.
1-0.
1-0. Yeah, 1-0. Neil would be real pissed at me for talking about a schedule, but
I'm sorry, I had to do it.
No, you're fine. But you get what I'm saying. The opportunity is there, and as much as the narrative has been written over the last 5 years of Neil Brown of he's not the guy to get this team there, or he's not the guy that can kind of get to that big game or win that big game, he can honestly in the next 3 weeks really redeem himself, and this team can redeem themselves from the start they had to this year just by winning 2 of their next 3. And I know that's a tall task because you're going on the road to an Arizona squad across the country and you have 2 good teams coming in to Morgantown, but the opportunity is there. And there's a lot of times that I think in sports where teams want the opportunity to play in these games and they just don't get it because the schedule doesn't break that way. This team gets that opportunity because if you remember last year, the 2 good teams they played in the league, like Oklahoma, they played and they got killed. Like they really didn't play any of the top teams in this league. And when they didn't really compete. And so you've got the opportunity now. You're coming off the best game you've played all year. How can you carry that momentum? How can you kind of say, all right, we kind of got the car going. We're getting up, we're getting in drive, we're going. And then how can you kind of hit the gas and full go on Saturday?
Yeah, and that stuff compounds too. You don't have this game. This game doesn't mean what it means if you don't win the last 2. And it's going to be that way for every game going forward. You earn these opportunities. They don't necessarily fall into your lap because who would care if West Virginia is sitting at 1-3 right now or 1-4 and you're looking at Kansas State coming to town. I don't think anybody would care. So you had to win games to get here, and that's what fans have been asking for, just consistency. Being able to finish games, play tough, hard football, and really for the last 5 quarters, I'd say, 4.5 quarters, West Virginia's done that.
4 2/3? No. But yeah, 100%. You're right. But let's get off of the topic of kind of the overall bigger picture and go to what really means the most. And that is what happened Saturday night at Milan Puskar Stadium. Keys to victory. I'll give you one, and that is taking care of the football.
Yep.
Why was West Virginia so productive against Oklahoma State on offense? Because they didn't give it to the Cowboy defense. Garrett Green, I think he went, 9 of 15 or 11 of 15, something in that range, 9 to 11 to 15. He didn't really have to throw the ball. I think he's going to have to throw the ball more. I also think his legs will still be a big thing. Maybe he slides when he's supposed to slide. Maybe he slides just in general, not even at the yard marker that he's supposed to slide. So he's not holding his right arm motionless in the first quarter. But seriously, I think his legs are going to be a factor because – that's been the X factor for him his whole career. And this is a good defense, and sometimes you just got to make plays and make things happen. And he showed that against Oklahoma State, especially early. Like that long run that he got hurt on, that was a 3rd down run where he just said, you know what, F it, I'm going. And sometimes you just got to do that. So taking care of the ball if you're Garrett, but also using your legs, because I know as much as the coaches say, don't run, because they don't want to see him holding his arm motionless again. He's got to run, and I think all parties involved do know that if West Virginia wants to win.
Yeah, and I think this is just a classic old football game. It almost sounds kind of ridiculous what we're telling you. Turnovers, and I was going to say 3rd downs and run the ball. Whichever team's able to run the ball the best, and then you got to be able to hit those splash plays in the passing game.
Well, 4th downs if you're West Virginia because they
they get 4 downs. So I guess apparently everywhere on the field now.
Yeah. If you're Ollie Straw or Michael Hayes, just give your helmet to the training staff, sit on back, get a snack. Because
I do not have a problem with that approach, though. I like the fact they're being aggressive. I like the fact they call. Now, sometimes you kind of wish they'd take the points, but I'm also not paid to be a football coach, and he is. So he's got to live with those decisions, whether they work or don't. But, yeah, I think that this is going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be a close game, too. West Virginia is playing their best football this season. Iowa State has played pretty good football the whole season. We're going to find out a lot about both of these teams in really short order. Kickoff will be here before you know it. I'm really excited for the night game atmosphere. I am not a jersey aficionado per se, but I'm excited to see how those things look under the lights.
I think it's going to be a pretty clean look. And I also think that, just speaking from a operations perspective, I bet there's some pretty cool kind of pregame atmosphere in terms of how they are entering this stadium. I bet that they get that crowd going to 1,000 as far as how that goes. And hopefully you can feed off it, because that crowd was buzzing against Penn State. I know we both said that to each other, like they were ready to rock, and they didn't give them a single thing to cheer about outside of the fumble recovery early, it felt like. And so if you're West Virginia, you got to reward those fans, because it's going to be a like Morgantown atmosphere. People say, "Oh, look how fun West Virginia is and how tough it is to play there." They're going to think of games like what might be the atmosphere on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited for it. What about picks? You have a pick?
Oh man, I see. Your 3-2-1 somewhat spoils your picks every Monday, and so
Yeah.
I kind of know where you're leaning. But I went against you last week. I'm going to go with you this week. If I think I know where you're going, I'm going to take the home team. I think that it's their time. I think that this team's good. And no knock on Iowa State, but I've got to see them prove it. I'm not sure they are the 11th best team in the country right now. I know this past week of college football was absolutely chaotic, and so there's some volatility there with the rankings, but I've got to see them do it against a good team. I've got to see them do it on the road. I know they did it on the road against Iowa, but I just think that this West Virginia team, especially offensively, is a lot better than the Iowa team. I think it's close. I think it's a little higher scoring late. I'm not sure. I think it's like a slow first half, third quarter, fourth quarter really gets going. But yeah, so I'm going to go West Virginia, I don't know, 27, Iowa State 23.
That's very similar to my score. I'm going to go 28-24 West Virginia. And I'll admit this, full transparency. I am banking on West Virginia trying to ride the momentum here. I don't think this is as good of a matchup for West Virginia, but I like the fact the game's at home. If this game was on the road, I would outright pick Iowa State. I think that West Virginia showed me some things last week. And I know that Oklahoma State did not look good, but you got to execute. You got to go out and play good football. And they played their best football of the season on both sides of the ball. You got that momentum now. You can hear it, talking to the players, talking to the coaches. This week, they're starting – I don't want to say starting to believe it, because you have to believe it the whole time, but it's starting to exude out of them a little bit that they know they're a better football team than what they put on tape, through the non-conference schedule. And I think, it's a little bit of a leap of faith here. And I don't always pick the game in the 3-2-1, but sometimes it really –
Last 2 weeks you have done it. Maybe even the Kansas week too. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it presents itself. And this week was one where I really think that West Virginia is going to come out and get this win. And it's going to be tough. I think there's going to be some back and forth, some anxiousness, but it's a coin flip. And I typically give the home team an advantage in those situations if the matchups aren't necessarily overly in one team's favor. So I think West Virginia is going to be able to do just enough and play just good enough on defense to get out of there with like a 28-24 win.
I will say, maybe this is just like a feeling I have based off of how they played last week. And as you said, banking on the way. I don't see a way where Iowa State runs away with this thing. I could see a way that West Virginia runs away with this thing. I just think that this team has some confidence, and I think that kind of that, especially on that offense, when you have those older guys, when you have a guy like Eric Green, who he thrives on that kind of swaggy vibe, that Baker Mayfield vibe. He compares himself to Baker all the time, right? And so I could kind of see he comes out hot, and they kind of go up a couple scores in the first quarter, and they just ride that to a 2-score win. I really don't see a world, and I could be proven very incorrect here, where Iowa State kind of pulls away. I'm just not sure that they're built really to pull away. Maybe they pull away in the sense kind of like Oklahoma State did last year when they were in here, where they kind of run the ball, and then in the fourth quarter. But I could see West Virginia pulling away. I'm not sure I could see Iowa State pulling away with this one.
It comes down to turnovers and mistakes to me. I definitely could see an outcome where Iowa State goes away. Of course, I'm done off those because last week you could not have convinced me in a million years that West Virginia was going to go down and just lap Oklahoma State the way they did. So I'm done with that. I'm just going to stick to game predictions.
Hey, you picked it right last week. You picked a win, and I didn't.
Well, it comes with the territory. You'll get some right, you'll get some wrong. So we'll see how it plays out. Hopefully, for our sake, at least in terms of everybody being excited about the program, we have that to talk about if West Virginia is able to take care of business there.
Yeah, hopefully it's not turning into Kansas State of, oh, here we go again after a tough loss. Before we kick it to our interview with Bill Seals, we wanted to give you all some breaking news and give our take on it. So West Virginia men's basketball, even though it is in the middle of football season, they're getting going, but recruiting is in full swing as Darian DeVries has landed 4-star recruit Kelvin Odih. And so Keenan, what are your thoughts on him as a recruit, as a player, and just kind of your overall take on this get by DeVries and company?
Big time get for Darian DeVries and crew. This is a guy that they really prioritized. They kind of got in late, relatively speaking. They offered in July, the end of July. I think I was on vacation when it happened, actually. They offered him, and things really kind of picked up from there. They really prioritized him, and has that relationship's built, he's kind of risen in the recruiting rankings. You know, he went from kind of an unranked guy to all the way up to 77th nationally. It's the highest player that West Virginia signed, according to Rivals, since Oscar Tshiebwe. You might have heard of him. So very, very good high school recruit. Fits what West Virginia wants to do to a T. He's a versatile guard, kind of wing player. He started out there. He's kind of grown and developed his guard skills. He could play anywhere from the 1 to the 3. He can get downhill and get to the rim. Really, really good defensively. He can guard multiple positions. Same thing when it comes to rebounding. So he fits exactly what they need. Tom Ostrom was the lead here, and DeVries played a role as well. You know, they were all over him. Anytime they had a chance to go see him, they went to go see him. You know, this group's kind of been selective when it comes to 2025 guys. They haven't been after a lot of them, but the ones that they've been after, they've really put a lot of effort into. And I would say that Odie's been right at the top of the list for all those guys, just as a fit and really all the attention they gave him. So, you know, this is now 2 commitments for them in the last week. So it's gone from a position of you're kind of worrying a little bit. Worrying is not the right word in this transfer portal era, but
questioning maybe.
Yeah, what you know, when are they going to land a guy? They get Braden Hawthorne. West Virginia kid originally from Beckley that's playing over at Huntington Prep. Another one of those versatile 6'8" guys, can guard multiple positions, play different positions. So, and then you add Odie on top of that, and it's gone from, you know, a little bit of what's going on here to wow, I can start to see this. Still got 5 spots left, and that's if nobody else transfers out. That's just from senior graduation. So you're going to see them continue to be active. I'm not sure if that'll be any more here in the early period, probably most likely not. Probably see him take a big emphasis on transfers and kind of develop this thing over time. You know, you'd like to get a few freshmen kind of as your base and then develop things further as you go with transfers and plug and, you know, match holes as you saw last year with what they did and kind of build the roster. You're kind of, I don't want to say hamstrung in a sense, but in today's college basketball, you almost have to do that until your players can grow up in the program and kind of take that lead. So big commitment for West Virginia just because of the effort there and really his fit.
Yeah, I think for DeVries and company too, a lot of the talk when he came to West Virginia was how will him being now at a bigger program, at a bigger school, affect things like recruiting. And I think this get is a big kind of statement, if you will, that, okay, we can compete with some of these schools. Because, I mean, look at the schools on the list that they chose them. Louisville, Oklahoma State, Creighton. Those were 3 of the finalists. And that's a good get for DeVries and company, especially considering that they've yet to play a game as West Virginia's head coach. And so it's not always the easiest, I would say, when you have still a level of unknown there of what they are, of who they can be, and things like that. But I think it's a positive. I think, as you said, right, like what a start in the week that you get 2 commits, a West Virginia native, and then a dude who ranks as highly as Odie does. So, any closing thoughts on this that you want to hit on?
Yeah, I think the one thing that he's put such an emphasis, DeVries, that is on recruiting nationally. I know everyone's going to look at him, the California where he's playing in prep school now. He's from Rhode Island, but being able to get these guys, get these high level targets on campus, being able to get in the picture. And this happened fast. I mean, these recruitments usually are well in advance. This happened fast. And really what kind of sold him, in my discussions with him in the past, it really was the family environment, what they were able to provide for him. And also on top of that, his fit. Nick Norton, the assistant coach, talked about this last week. This is a fun scheme to play in offensively and defensively. And I think that you're going to see that play a little bit with kids on the recruiting trail. And this is a major example of that. The first of what you hope is many, because they put a strong emphasis on recruiting when they were putting the staff together.
And going forward, we are a month-ish away from basketball season, probably just about that. And so with that, we will be sure to have a lot more basketball content in addition to our football content. So anything else from you, or are we going to get it to Bill's interview?
Yeah, let's get it to Bill. We've been going quite a while today.
All right. Here is an interview with Bill Seals about Iowa State. And here we are. It is our pleasure to be joined by Bill Seals of CycloneReport.com from the Rivals Network. Bill is here to give us all the insight on Iowa State, as he knows the Cyclones a lot better than us. So, Bill, let's start here. The 5-0 start is obviously what kind of stands out to a lot of us here in Morgantown. How for Bill is this team at 5-0, and what's kind of the buzz around the program? I think this is their best start since 1980. What's kind of the vibe there?
Well, 1980 and much more even on the line Saturday. 6-0 would be the first time since 1938. So it seems like it's been a season of firsts so far. A couple weeks ago, Matt Campbell became the all-time winningest head coach in program history. So I think that the start, though, it was very favorable for Iowa State to get things going. I think West Virginia Saturday is going to be probably the biggest test that they've had to date. And then it's kind of backloaded on the end, the schedule. They go to Utah, and then they host Kansas State the last 2 weeks of the regular season. So I think that given that, I think they needed to take care of business in the front half of the schedule. They had a nice win at Iowa, and I think there's a lot of excitement around the program. It was a very experienced team coming back. They kind of had their knocks at times in the early part of last season, and really came together and tremendous start this year, and an offense that's been very balanced, and offensive line. Gosh, I think this is probably the best they've performed in Matt Campbell's tenure, and it's kind of paved the way. So I think, a lot of excitement though around the program, and it's going to be a big time test on Saturday.
As far as that offense goes, obviously for West Virginia fans, that Beck name stands out due to Rocco and Anthony. And obviously there's the Hall of Fame ceremony happening. Do you think the stage, or not even the stage, but just kind of the moment with the family, that kind of is having an effect on Rocco at all? Or do you think it'll be kind of business as usual for him heading into Saturday?
Well, he's handled everything that's come his way very, very well. And there were some big moments for him last season, and he entered last season not even knowing really until like maybe June or July that he was going to be the number one quarterback. So a lot that came his way last season, big time moments that I thought he handled well. So I don't foresee any reason why he won't be able to handle what comes his way on Saturday as well, and be a big moment certainly for the family. I think on halftime, is that when they're honoring him?
First quarter, sometime in that range. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it may be good for him. They get that out of the way early then.
On the note of Rocco, though, as far as like possible comparisons, I think the Brock Purdy name just gets thrown out there because he's the most notable name from Iowa State, one of the most notable names from Iowa State. Does he compare to Brock at all? And are they similar? Are they different? How does those two games kind of contrast?
Well, as far as quarterbacks in the Campbell era, I think that's probably the best description, really best comparison that you could use. There, Rocco didn't really, he wasn't really much of a scrambler early in the season, like we saw Purdy so many times on third and long or whatever. He'll use his legs and move the chains, and we saw that a little bit more against Baylor last week as I think an encouraging sign moving forward. He even made one of the Baylor defenders miss. That was kind of one of the highlight plays of that game, and moved the chains, I believe, on a similar, like a third and long, moved the chains and kept the offense going. So yeah, that very good comparison. And also, just like Rocco early in his college career as well, kind of taken over the reins and in similar fashion as well.
Defensively, I think that's what stands out to at least Keenan and myself, is how good Iowa State has played on defense. First, just kind of where the defense is at. I know there was a couple injury bugs that have kind of been circulating. Where are they health-wise on that defense?
Well, I think it's going to be a question mark going into Saturday. Not a lot that we'll know until, I guess, maybe the team even gets off the plane who travels with them. So linebackers been the area they've been hit the most. They lost Cale Brazina during that game against Baylor, and other situations to other guys there meant they had to roll with a preferred walk-on in the second half of that Baylor game. Ryland Barnes was his name, and it was the first time he'd played linebacker in a game before, and came in, and I thought acquitted himself well. And gauging Campbell's comments yesterday in his weekly press conference, I'm not expecting to see Brazina this weekend, so it very well could be the walk-on Ryland Barnes again at Mike linebacker on Saturday. Another candidate, maybe Jack Sadowski, is someone who started all 13 games as a true freshman last year. Has kind of been nicked up a little bit, not really any clear answer on his status, I don't think. So it's still up in the air on if we see Jack Sadowski, assuming Brazina doesn't go. And then really even beyond linebacker, they've got a couple of defensive linemen missed some snaps against Baylor. J.R. Singleton, Dominic Orange, they did return later in the game, but they were out for extended periods of that game against Baylor. So, interesting to see how those two come through practice this week. And again, the strength of that defense is in the secondary, and it also just happens to be where they've been the healthiest as well. Those three safeties, I think they run that 3-3-5 with the three high safety look. I think those three are as good as any group of safeties in the Big 12, and I would even say in the country for what we've seen. They're ball hawks back there, helping to force a lot of turnovers, good tackling, good coverage. They really bring it all, and then a pretty good group of corners. So again, that front, I guess with the 3-3-5, that front six, I think is going to be key for the Cyclones against West Virginia, and I think the mobile quarterback and those two running backs, that could be where this game, I think, is won or lost for West Virginia, because Iowa State has been susceptible against the run, and I think that's certainly one of the strengths of the Mountaineers. So that'll be one matchup to watch on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think just the numbers kind of tell that story, where passing defense, they're first in the Big 12, Iowa State is, but then rushing defense, I think they're eighth. And I know Keenan and I, we were referencing sample size and how that might be a little unfair this still early in the year. But as you said, those defensive backs, the numbers pop off the page for sure. But scheme-wise, what are they doing well with the scheme? It seems like every single year the Iowa State defense is the tough code to crack.
Mm-hmm.
I know they've kind of revamped things recently and a couple years ago, and it's just they've always been good on defense. What do they do so well to make them so stout on that side of the ball?
Well, I think as offenses in the Big 12 have evolved and changed, and now Texas, Oklahoma gone, 4 new teams in the mix, and as things have evolved with the offenses that they've faced defensively, they've evolved a little bit too. They've started tinkering around a little bit more with a 4-man front. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, Singleton and Orange, those two guys playing a lot of snaps. They're two of the better players on defense, and they're more interior guys as well. So I think to showcase them, maybe rolling out a little more four-man front. I'm not sure what the percentages are, maybe 15 to 20% of the time they're in a four-man front, and certainly situations will determine that as well. So they've started experimenting a little bit with that. Pass rushing too. At times they've struggled with that. And a name you'll, I'm sure, remember Will McDonald from a few years ago. I believe he ended up tied for the career high in sacks in the Big 12, and he's gone now for a couple years. And they've struggled at times rushing the quarterback and have not really replaced him with anyone quite that dominant. It's been more of a team effort now as far as pass rush goes. And again, I think it'll go back to linebacker play as well. How are they going to tackle with so many guys missing there? And that's going to be key when you match up against West Virginia with those running backs and the mobile quarterback. But I know the secondary is going to show up, but we'll see how the rest of it goes.
I know Keenan and I were working post-game on Saturday night, but we did kind of keep up score-wise with that Baylor game, and it seemed to be kind of a little bit close in the first half before Iowa State really just flexed their muscle and pulled away. What were your overall just takeaways from that Baylor game of what impressed you or what you might not have been impressed about after that victory?
Well, so many times we've seen with this Iowa State team so far this season, it's been the slow starts. That played out again against Baylor. They trailed. They did fight back to take a lead right before going into half, and then the first drive of the third quarter give up a touchdown. So they actually trail with it was like 5 minutes into the second half. They trail again, and then they score 24 unanswered points to close out the game. The defense, I think it was three stops and then a forced turnover. So again, that was a key. Got an interception out of Jontez Williams, and they turned Baylor over on downs a couple times as well. So I think the defense really set the tone with that, and then the offense, it showed up, and they really set out to they set out to establish the run early in that game, and then I think that's how they closed it out as well. The Eastern Michigan transfer, Jalen Jackson, leads the stable of running backs. Similar to West Virginia, Iowa State's going to use multiple guys there. It was Jalen Jackson's turn last week, and before that, it's been Abu Sama and Carson Hansen. So kind of a three-headed monster there at running back right now for the Cyclones, and that's how they were able to close it out. And this is really, again, I mentioned the offensive line, how it's probably the best that we've seen under Matt Campbell, and it continues to round into form. They've got Jalen Travis, the left tackle, a grad transfer out of Princeton. He's healthy now. They've inserted him in the lineup, I believe, for the first time against Baylor. He had his first start, was hurt otherwise, and he is a mountain of a man. Let me tell you, like 6'9" and just huge. And I think they're going to set out to try and establish the run in this game.
Going to the offense, the two receivers, those are two guys that just their numbers too are kind of big. I know Jaden Higgins has 5 touchdowns on the year. I think it is that's a number that when Keenan and I talk about the game, those are two receivers that really cause problems. What's their game like? Are they kind of more physical, more down the field speed? What's kind of their role in this offense?
Well, Higgins is kind of your post-up guy, your physical guy. You're one that you're going to probably run a fade to in the end zone when you're on the goal line or whatnot. He's got a streak going now. I think a national best streak at the moment, school record as well for 7 straight games with scoring a touchdown. So he'll take that into Saturday night's game. But yeah, he's the guy that the tall physical receiver, the X. And then in the slot, and he can even play a little bit outside too. Jalen Noel is your possession guy, but he's been a big play guy as well. At one time, I think last season carried over into early this season, had 3 straight games of a touchdown of 75 yards or more. So he's kind of that, you look at him and you think he's that prototypical slot guy, but he's somebody that can certainly take the top off the defense as well, and he's done that. So, yeah, those are kind of 1A, 1B stable of wide receivers. And then at tight end, Ben Bramer, he was a Nebraska flip that they got in the 2023 class, was a true freshman last year, played a big role. And then this year he's playing even more snaps, developed his game a lot more. So they're going to, I would imagine they're going to try and get him involved in this game as well. They have done that in recent weeks.
And then as far as just atmosphere goes, I know that West Virginia fans, it's their Coal Rush game, it's their night game, the first big one of the year, and also it's 2 teams that are sitting undefeated in the Big 12. I know Iowa State went to Iowa earlier this year. How much do you think that has prepared this team to kind of enter an atmosphere like they'll face on Saturday night?
Well, yeah, it was quite a matchup out there in Iowa City. It was an afternoon game. That'll give it probably a different feel than what we'll see on Saturday night. But they have gone on the road and played well. Iowa State has, I think, now 5 straight Big 12 road victories. So they've shown the ability to go away from Jack Trice Stadium and play well. They're going to have to play great on Saturday night, though, because I think where West Virginia's strengths are, though, on offense especially, that's kind of been a weakness for the Cyclones. So they're going to have to, I think, play great. I think I've got this game as a toss-up right now. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, that kind of leads us into where we always end these with a somewhat of a keys to victory and then a prediction. I know we kind of had it as a toss-up too, but what were your keys to the game for Iowa State? And then if you have to give a prediction, what would it be?
Yeah, I think Iowa State, Garrett Green, first and foremost. I think when Iowa State's had its struggles, it's been sometimes with those mobile quarterbacks, and I think what Green has shown, they're really going to have to be cognizant of his ability to. I think it'd be difficult if the defense maybe wins on first down and second down, and you got a 3rd and 9, and then Green gets loose and moves the chains that way. So that's something I think they've got to contain the quarterback run game. A good start as well. This has been a team more times than not. It's been a second half club. I think it's a veteran coaching staff, and they've been able to make great adjustments because of that. So they've been able to turn things around in the second half. But I think going on the road in an atmosphere like this, I don't think they can afford to go into the intermission trailing by a couple of scores and expect to come back and win. So, yeah, and they need to get off to a good start. And then also 3 straight games now where they've rushed for more than 235 yards in each of those last 3 games. And against a West Virginia defense like this, they've got to establish that balance, get the run game going. And I think on the road, whenever you can go on the road and you can establish that run game, I think it's going to take a lot of pressure off of Rocco's shoulders for sure. And this offensive line, the last 3 weeks, they've really put it all together. And I think that could be a big factor in if the Cyclones can go on the road and prevail.
And then do you think the Cyclones will be able to get it done in Morgantown this week?
Well, I still got it. I still got it as a toss-up. It's really tough to say just injury-wise. It's not like maybe it is in the Big Ten or the SEC, where by now we probably have an idea who's going to play defensively. So I think a lot of it depends on who's going to be available, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think if they happen to get Cale Brazina back for this game, I would say that the Cyclones probably going to win the game. If they've got to roll with a preferred walk-on at Mike linebacker for an entire game and go up against that rushing attack, I think it could be tough. And I think maybe West Virginia in that case, maybe by 2 or 3 points. So I think it's going to be a tough one. It's the stiffest challenge of the season so far for the Cyclones, a night game on the road, 5-0, more history on the line. So I think there's a lot of pressure, a lot on the line this week. And this team also, they haven't won 10 games in a season in school history. So that's another little bit that's on the line as well. They want to go on the road and win here and keep this streak rolling for what could be in the works in November, December.
Well, Bill, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to break down Iowa State. I know our audience is looking forward to it, as I'm sure your audience as well. So if you made it this far on this episode, we do appreciate you listening. We were pleased to be joined by Bill Seals, and this is the WVSports.com podcast.